Corey Brada here from the Hawkeye of the Storm, joined by Coach Gary Close, and I apologize for the brief delay there, Gary. I had some technical issues. We're not able to take calls tonight, but kind of fitting that my equipment would break right at the same moment that Iowa's offense does. And I understand, Gary, we're going to talk about Rutgers' defense. It certainly was an impressive display, and we knew that coming in. This is a Steve Pikiell team that tends to always play aggressive and certainly physical, and they're going to get calls at home. But can you account for 46 points for this Fran McCaffrey offense, and do we have some issues at hand here?
Yeah, it's hard really to fathom. If you just said going in that you'd hold Rutgers at 48 points, you might think that I would win by 20. And it's just one of those nights. They couldn't buy a basket literally everywhere. They did not shoot well from three. They didn't finish well around the basket. They didn't draw a lot of fouls. It's disappointing because it just needed an average offensive night, and they probably would have won the game.
I sent an email to Matt Weitzel of Iowa, and he said that they don't track halves, because I had asked him at halftime, has there ever been a half in as far as what they had on hand, as far as records? Has there ever been a half under Fran McCaffrey where Iowa shot worse than 30%? Offensively? And I don't know the answer to that question. My guess is maybe, but I can't imagine a situation where they've shot under 30% for half and yet had the lead. So that was the case tonight. Second half seemed to get worse, Gary. That those first couple of minutes of the second half, Iowa actually was able to put together a string of points. I think they increased the lead to 8. But after that, it was just absolutely nothing that entire second half. So here's what my concern is, Gary, and you can maybe alleviate this a little bit. My concern is this reminded me a lot of that Iowa State game right here in Ames that I was at. Just seemed like a physical team that Iowa had problems matching that physicality of Rutgers. Tell me I'm wrong. I know rebounding-wise, Iowa rebounded the ball better than they did in Ames.
Yeah, no, I think they definitely did that. I think there is some truth to that. When you play physical teams, you've got to cut hard. You got to set strong screens. I don't think they've been a great screening team all year, both off the ball as well as on the ball. Just using the screens better and setting more physical screens to free up the pressure. And they lack a, with the exception of maybe Keegan, they lack an inside scorer that they can just go dump it in there and let him go to work and draw a foul or get a basket when they get into droughts. And I thought tonight they probably shot too many threes the way they were shooting them, and should have taken the hole a little bit stronger and hope to draw some fouls. But, it's easy to say when you're sitting here in your home and trying to break it down, but it wasn't a good offensive game.
Certainly was not. And, you don't want to always point to the officiating. I don't understand I'll just be honest, and I think I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of Iowa fans. I don't know how you make that call on Keegan there at the end in that situation with as much physicality as was allowed in this game, and you're going to call Keegan Murray for that. And I know, there's if you're looking at it from a technical standpoint, you can reason the call, but
right.
Can you agree with that sentiment, Gary?
Yeah, no, especially at that time and the way the game's been played, it was a grinding game all game long. No, I thought that was a really bad call. I think it does show that when you're guarding the ball, you want to try to show your hands to the officials, because if they don't see them, then a lot of times they assume you're holding them, even if you're not. And I'm not sure that was the case. I think it was just a bad call, but his hands did get caught in there a little bit. But in that situation, you don't like to see a call like that. I thought it was bad.
Another call that certainly was frustrating for Iowa fans, and I'll just be honest, I understand it was very close. My issue with the overturn at the end of the first half, and Robbie Hummel brought it up, is my understanding, at least the principle, and I don't know if it's set in stone, if it's actually written in the rule book, so to speak, like it is in college football. But Gary, if a call on the court is one thing, don't you have to have conclusive evidence to overturn that call? Isn't that sort of principle of officiating?
Yeah, I would assume so. Yeah.
So I don't want anybody to tell me that was conclusive, that the ball was still in his hand. There's just no way on earth that any official can look at that and say with 100% certainty that ball was still in his hand.
Right. Yeah. That was a tough call too. There's no question. That's life on the road. and they were two very, very questionable calls, and definitely had a significant impact on the game. And yet, you realize that they should have been able to do some things that those two calls shouldn't even have been a factor. That with their play, they needed to, on the road. You got to get through that kind of stuff, and make enough plays that you escape. And unfortunately, they didn't, which was too bad, because that was a game they had right in their grasp and would have been another really good road win.
So in the long run, I know you alluded to it a little bit, but in the long run, are you concerned now that there's a bit of a blueprint? We even saw Iowa struggle with that zone of Minnesota's late in the game on Sunday. Are you concerned with the stagnancy we've seen here and there offensively now from Iowa?
Not really. I mean, they're the number one scoring team in the league, and it's a league that's got some real good defensive teams. They got nothing out of their bench tonight, which hurt. I mean, literally nothing. I don't think they got a made basket. In a 2-point game, you need some help there, and really nobody shot the ball well. Fortunately, they played pretty good defense, or it could have really been a disaster. So, if this had been something that's happened a lot, I'd be a little more concerned. But I do think they've got to cut down on their dribbling and more passing and cutting and screening, especially against physical teams. Physical teams want you to dribble. It's easier to guard, especially if you're not turning the corner and getting downhill. And Iowa did not do a lot of that, and probably should have forced it a little bit to see if they could draw some fouls. I don't know how many free throws they got, but it wasn't a lot. When you're not shooting the ball well, that's where you got to get inside and draw some fouls and get some easier baskets, and especially when the three's not dropping.
11 shot threes for Iowa, 13 for Rutgers. And Iowa, the problem is they got there 11 times. They were 6 of 11 for a team that leads the conference in free throw shooting. So,
yeah, that hurt.
I mean, I know it's apples to oranges maybe, but you make a couple of those free throws and you're winning this game. And certainly, again, I understand the fans that look at this and say, well, Toussaint's bucket is counted, and certainly that last foul call, certainly officiating played a role. But, I mean, I looked at the game, and I'm not just trying to say I've got Homer glasses on. To me, Iowa just didn't deserve to win this game, because I've never seen so many shot clock violations, and, you had 2 or 3 air balls from Jordan Bohannon on the outside. And I'll be surprised that I'll be honest, I was surprised that Keegan Murray was able to I thought it was a well-designed play with the screener coming up and screening Amarui or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
It was a good throw from Connor, and I thought Keegan got a pretty good look at it. One of the better looks he had.
Yeah, you can't ask for much better than that. In fact, I was surprised Rutgers didn't miss the second free throw on purpose.
Yeah.
To prevent just that, but because you're probably not going to get a 2 unless you throw it all the way to the basket. So a 3 is going to beat you either way. But no, I think with 2 seconds left to get a decent look was a well executed play, and unfortunately it didn't go in.
Now, here's a technical question I have for you, and I don't know the answer to it, Gary, but in a situation like that, so I believe there was 1.9 seconds left when the 2 free throws were made for Rutgers. And for the record, if you watch that back, I think Geo Baker was trying to miss that second free throw. Now, maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe.
The way the trajectory looked like he was trying to miss, and he made it. But I don't know the rules on this. If Iowa were to rebound, if that second shot was missed, it's a 1-point lead, and Iowa rebounds it and calls a timeout, and obviously you're going to have some time lost. Is Connor McCaffrey able to run the baseline in that situation, or is it a spot? So he's got a so there's no reason not to miss that second free throw, really, because you're going to deal with the 3-point shot the other way, likely either way.
Yeah, no, I agree. Plus, there's going to be some time off. The ball might get bobbled. Wisconsin did it not too long ago in a game where Davidson actually missed both of them, and that resulted in a rebound, but they couldn't get the shot off in time to win the game. So I was a little surprised. And maybe he did try to miss it and made it. That's kind of funny in a night where nobody can make it. They try to miss it, and that's when they do make it. I mean, it was a tough night shooting, really, really was, because they didn't even need to shoot just mediocre, and they would have won that game.
I'll be honest. I didn't think and I saw people on Twitter upset about the officials, and I just voiced my frustration with the officials on those two calls. I didn't think the officiating was bad throughout the game. I thought they were letting them play. Did you feel the same way, or were you upset with the officiating?
No, I didn't. Nothing really jumped out at me other than that call and the thing at halftime. I was a little disappointed in that being changed. No, I at least I didn't think anybody got an advantage, and it didn't look like it from terms of free throws and number of fouls drawn. I think the game was officiated fine. It was just a real struggle for both teams offensively. I think the shot selection with both teams was a little questionable, and a lot of poor finishing around the basket. Just those shots are not as easy as they look, and they got to knock some of those down or draw a foul to get enough points to win that game.
There was a clear push in the back on Philip Rebrach on an alley-oop in that second half that was, I thought, blatant. That was missed. But other than that, I didn't have anything marked down as far as calls that to me that were obvious. Besides, again, the one you mentioned with Toussaint, and of course the foul on Keegan there at the end. I'll be honest. That first half, Iowa had some opportunities in the fast break. I can think of one specifically with Toussaint and Patrick.
Yeah, Joe made two high floating passes that both didn't work, and then he came down on the third one, made a great bounce pass, and they scored. Those alley-oops look great when they work. The problem is when they don't, you don't even get a shot off, and that's Iowa's been really good at not turning the ball over. Those were two huge chances to score in a game like this. You'd love to have those back. I don't think they executed real well in transition like they normally do. I think Joe did some good things out there, but on those two instances, those floating high passes, they got to be right on the money. And if they're not, then it's in the seats or it's bobbled, or just go in there and make a solid play, bounce it to them, and let them lay it in. Yeah, the passing wasn't great. There were some post feeds that were not great, and that'll affect your shooting. They're normally a really good passing team that doesn't turn the ball over a lot. I didn't think they passed the ball real well tonight.
Dan says, we are an NIT team like we thought. Tough loss, but Keegan is fun to watch. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's one game on the road. Now, I went into this game, Gary, as a fan, feeling pretty relaxed, because you feel like you lose this game on the road. That's a good Rutgers team that I don't think started off the season real hot in November, but they haven't lost at home since that early loss to, was it Lafayette? So undefeated at home, of course, knocked off Purdue there a couple of weeks ago. So that's not a bad team. I think the frustration here is how Iowa lost. I don't think anybody expected this game. Right. You're going to get a physical game with Rutgers. And I will say this, rebounding the ball, I made the parallel between Iowa State and Rutgers. And Iowa State, of course, dominated Iowa on the boards. Rutgers also, you could say, dominated Iowa on the boards, 49-38. So Iowa gets out rebounded again. And that's not a real big Rutgers team. And I know, is it again, Amari, whatever his name is, was in some foul trouble late in that game as well. I didn't notice rebounding as being a huge, something that really stood out for Iowa tonight. But
yeah, I didn't either. When you shoot a lot of threes, it's hard to get offensive rebounds. And those balls are bouncing all over the place. It can be tough to track those down. So I didn't think so. I thought, it was their offensive execution and shooting the ball, from the free throw line to around the basket to out to three. They shot the ball poorly in every spot. And they could have gone into the game, played real well, and lost. The frustrating part is that, they could have played a little bit better and won this game. And so that makes it a little frustrating, but Rutgers hasn't lost a game at home yet in the Big Ten. So that would have been a heck of a win. So you got to, we've talked about it, Corey, you got to look at the tape and, hey, where do we get better? And then you got to get ready for Penn State on Saturday. Because if you're not, then you one loss turns into two, turns into three, and then it gets to be a problem.
Gary, tell me the second best player on this team right now.
On Iowa?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question.
I don't think it's clear.
Well, it changes from night to night. There's no doubt about that. That's a real good question. It's been a little, some nights it's been Chris Murray, some nights it's been Jordan, some nights it's been Patrick. All of them been a little bit inconsistent. Jordan had some looks that were, he normally makes. He had a few that were tough too, but some of those were forced with the shot clock winding down. So he's got to get to shoot the ball a little bit better. He's too good a shooter to miss some of those shots that he missed. But sometimes when you get in a game like that, it gets contagious. Some nights you're hot and everybody's making them, and some nights you just can't throw it in the ocean from the beach. And that was one of the games tonight. It was just a real struggle from a shooting standpoint.
And I think honestly, I think these last two games, Filip Rebraca has been the second most valuable player.
He's played well. Yeah. He's playing with a little more sense of urgency, a little more physical. I don't think there's any question he's improved. But we talked about it earlier. He's not one that can, let's run a play, get that ball inside to him. We need a bucket. Really, the only one is Murray, and they ran a great play from Murray underneath the basket, and Joe couldn't complete the pass. He tried to pass it right off a dribble, and there was no ball fake, and the guy got a foot on it or something, and the guy was wide open. It's execution. And I think when they look at the tape, they're going to see a lot of that their passing tonight wasn't as good as it normally is, and that'll affect your shooting.
I'm just going to read through some of these comments here, Gary, about what's on the fans' minds right now. Doug says, been watching basketball for over 30 years. 99% of refs would never make that call with 2 seconds to go. If it's not a foul with 10 minutes to go, it's not a foul with 2 seconds to go. Go Hawkeyes 1 says refs with the bailout. Those 2 points the officials took away at the end of the first half seem pretty important. Skylar says 2 seconds left. Love tap, called a foul. BS, even the announcers called it. Doug says, yes, the 2 points into the half, and it's a different game. Again, yeah, there's no question about it. It's one of those things. I think you look at the situation with officiating, and I'm not trying to say that I disagree with some of the sentiments here, but this game was lost because Iowa shot what was the final count, like 27%. I got the official box score just came in. Iowa shot 27.9% from the field. Gary, you don't deserve to win a game. You shoot 27.9% from the field.
Yeah, it's hard to win. It's hard to win shooting 29%. I think the other thing is you got to, and I'm sure they'll do it. There's no question those were two really bad calls. And if they'd gone the other way, it might have made a difference. I think obviously, certainly the last one. But as a team, you can't bail yourself out with that and not look at some of the things that you're not doing that you could have done that would have won the game regardless of those calls, or you'll lose more games like that. And we've mentioned it, finishing around the basket, better passing, knocking free throws down, all that stuff. If they'd have done a little bit better, those calls wouldn't have mattered. I'd be the first to say that, especially the last one, was a really, really bad call, which is too bad because, let's go into overtime and see what happens. But they could have gone in overtime and lost then too. And so their offensive execution has got to get better. But I agree with all the callers. That was a really disappointing call with 2 seconds to go.
I'm going to disagree with Vincent. I think this is the same Vincent that's battled me on the phone before. To say we don't have a player that go get a bucket when we really need one, I don't think that's true at all, because I understand it didn't happen tonight, but we just had Keegan Murray make a huge three against Minnesota that sealed the deal in that game, came up with a huge block late, and Iowa's got possibly the best closer in the history of the program in Jordan Bohannon. Now, I will say this, Gary, Jordan Bohannon was in all kinds of misery tonight. Yeah. I mean, he couldn't get a shot off clean.
No. There were times where he could. There were times, I'd say half of his threes were good looks that he did. He made a few, missed a few. And then 3 or 4 of them were, end of shot clock, heavily contested, tough shots, they're real low percentage shots. But how many threes did they get where they dribbled, penetrated, or went to the post and kicked it back out again? There were very few. Most of their threes came on passes around the perimeter, and those are easier to guard. It would be interesting to go back and look at the quality of the 3-point shots. And I I think they probably shot close to 30. And I'm going to guess that half of them probably weren't real good, high quality shots. In some cases, maybe they had to shoot them because of the shot clock, but you got to get penetration. You got to get a better shot than that. And so that plays into your low percentage when you're shooting low percentage shots. Not that they all were, but sometimes you get shooters, they go 2 for 9. And they go, God, I shot the ball well. And you go back and look at their shots, and 6 of them were bad shots. And then you wonder why you're not shooting high percentage. In Jordan's case, I'm going to guess half of his, if he was 2 for 8, I'm going to guess 4 of them were real low percentage shots. Some he had to force because of the shot clock, but got to get him better looks. And the good looks he gets, he's got to knock down, which I think he will. He's too good a shooter for this to last, for a long time. He's a proven 3-point shooter. So tonight was not one of those nights, though.
Okay, Gary, this is the $1 million question. How do you get Jordan Bohannon more open looks? Because it seems like Iowa's trying to run him off screens, and right now he seems to be struggling at that 2 position to get looks more. You'd think he'd be getting more open looks from 3 at the 2, at least from my mind, than he would playing point, but he hasn't been getting real open looks. He had a couple tonight. He airballed 1, actually, but how do you generate more open looks for J-Bo?
Well, I think, it's a number of things. I think they got to screen better. I think they got to get more penetration, whether it's with dribbling or with into the post and then back out. Those are your best threes, the drives and kicks, the drive and kick and then make another pass. Those are the high percentage threes. They're not getting a lot of those. And when they do, they shoot them better. They got, they don't have a real strong post presence other than Keegan. They dump it in. Hey, you double team, let's kick it out, make an extra pass, get a wide open 3. So I think it's, I don't know if you can put your finger on one thing. I think they do got to screen better. I think they got to move the ball better. I think there's a little bit too much dribbling. But then I think also they got to get penetration with some north-south dribbling, not east-west, and some post feeds to where the defense has got to collapse and open up some shots on the outside. It's there's a lot of things there that can free up shooters to get better looks.
And I promise I'm not criticizing Fran McCaffrey's rotation, but I was way off. I made a prediction pregame on Twitter that I thought Chris Murray would get over 20 minutes tonight because he had 11 on Sunday, and I couldn't have been further off. He had less than 11. He had 10 minutes tonight. I understand he's young and he's still coming along. And again, I'm not trying to criticize Fran's rotation, but he's coming off a 29-point double-double against Indiana. And these last 2 games, he's played a total of 21 minutes. That just seems odd to me, Gary.
Seems a little odd to me too. It's hard to actually put a finger on that. But
I will say this: I did hear Kenyon Murray on the radio here a couple of weeks ago. I believe it was after the Utah State game. Had said that both twins had been dealing with an injury issue prior to the Utah State game. So I don't know if maybe there's a lingering thing going on here.
Could be, yeah.
But I just find that odd after that big performance.
Yeah. It sounds odd based on that, but there might be some things we don't know about that maybe cause him to get some less minutes because they got to get more production off the bench. That's a given.
Hyperlocal says you get J-Bo more looks by bringing in Peyton Sandford. He's another guy, Gary, that we're not getting a whole lot from him right now offensively. And he's young, so I'm not putting it on him. But just to me, there's just a seesaw with a lot of what Iowa has from an offensive standpoint. And you mentioned it. It seems like the second best player night in and night out is a different guy. And I feel like tonight there wasn't ever really that second guy. And when Keegan Murray doesn't put up 25, you're asking for trouble. I think in any Big Ten game, I don't care if it's Rutgers defense or, Nebraska's. I think you're going to deal with some issues on the road.
Yeah. Well, when you have a young team that doesn't have a whole lot of experience, you're going to get some inconsistency. And there are some guys there that are doing this for the first time or close to it, and you're going to get some up and downs. That goes with the territory. So hopefully that's going to get better.
Okay, so Ben has a differing opinion on the last foul, and I respect your opinion, Ben. When you say he was clearly riding him with the forearm, I don't think I'm not debating that. I don't think any fans are debating that. But again, when you watch this game, to me, that sort of a defensive stance was occurring for Rutgers every single possession, it seemed like. And
yeah.
not called unless there's typically extension, correct?
Yeah. No, I didn't even think he was going towards the basket. It looks like he was drilling more towards the sideline, and it wasn't real physical. But we mentioned before, when they can't see your hands, that's why you try to teach, show your hands to the officials. Don't let them lay in there, because if they're not seen, then they may assume that's what he might have done. Is, hey, I don't see any hands. He must be holding them. But I don't think it was a good call. I don't think there was enough riding, as he talks about, enough physicalness to make that call. I even thought the dribbler wasn't even really, was more going towards the corner than he was going towards the basket, and not really turning the corner. And with 2 seconds left, I didn't like it.
All right, Vincent, I love you, buddy, but you're bringing this up again. So I will remind you again, Sunday versus Minnesota, you watch the playback. Keegan Murray came to the top of the arc, demanded the ball, shot the three, made the three, won the game. I understand they were up by 3 at that point, but that sealed it. Then came to the other side of the floor and blocked. I don't know what more you want him to do. And if you're talking about the last play, that's a pretty low percentage shot. Again, I thought Iowa was fortunate to even get that good of a look.
Well, I think in a little bit of his defense, I think he is the one guy that we could, if we need a bucket inside, that's who we got to go to, and he's got to demand the ball and get some inside baskets and draw some fouls. And like I said, they ran a play for him with a couple of minutes to go. A beautiful play, well executed. He made an underneath cut underneath the basket off a screen. He was wide open, and Joe didn't get it to him. And we talk, that's execution. But I think he is the guy that can get Iowa some buckets inside, and I think he's got to be a little more assertive doing that. But I think he can do it. I got to call his number, and he's obviously hit some big threes. So he's young. I mean, he's still a young guy doing, playing his game. But I think he's the best option in there, and I think he does have to be a little more assertive, and I think that's their look. If they need an inside bucket, it's got to be to him.
Hyperlocal says that was the best defense this team has played in the last 4 years. I know I'm disagreeing with everybody, but Gary, Rutgers also missed a lot of gimmies in this game, and I know Robbie Hummel brought it up. I think they were 4 of 13 on layups, at least according to Hummel at one point.
Right.
Are we dealing with some, again, I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, but are we dealing with a little bit of fool's gold from the Iowa defense right now? Because it still seems like there's way too many easy buckets, dunks. I thought they played okay defensively, but when you look at the score, when you look at, okay, they gave up 48, that's eye-popping, but I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, because we saw low scoring outputs for Iowa opponents last year, and then, of course, we learned in the tournament that it really hadn't come very far.
Yeah, no, I thought they played pretty good defense tonight. You're not going to be perfect. I think one of the things they did real well is they didn't foul, shots around the basket that a lot of teams do. The game the other night between Wisconsin and Northwestern missed like 20 free throws. 20 layups. They missed 20 layups and only shot 8 free throws. I mean, that's almost staggering to, you're getting the ball that close to the basket. You got to be drawing some fouls. So I thought they played pretty well. I thought they did a good job of being disciplined around the basket and not just whacking people when they got in there. Some of those shots are difficult to make, especially if you can body people up and not let them get angles to the basket. It's those point blank ones that you don't want to give up. And I don't know if they gave up too many just flat out point blank layups that they missed. They missed some shots around the hoop that were contested. But I thought overall their defense was really good, and certainly good enough to win. And, Rutgers has put some hurting on some people in that place. And they also did not shoot the ball well, but I think Iowa deserves some credit for that. I thought their defense was real solid tonight.
Well, I will trust you on that rather than my own eyesight. So, and again, I'm somebody who I feel like I've been burned in the past, because there have been moments in last couple of years where it feels like they've turned a corner defensively, and then an Oregon happens, or it's a game in Bloomington happens. So, but I agree. And again, I'm not trying to infer that they've played poorly,
Right.
and I am a perfectionist from a fan perspective, and I am going to point out easy layups for Rutgers and whatnot. So I do want to bring this up here. Let me find it. I thought this was a beautiful comment, and I don't mean to rip the Iowa football team, but Circle Herc says the Hawkeye football team was watching this going, man, they need to get the offense going.
Yeah.
Gary, you're a fan of Kirk Ferentz, so I'll take a shot at him, or I'll let Circle Herc take a shot there. But let's see here. Eric says, off night offensively, Iowa showed they can stay in a close game with defense. Very true. When struggling on offense, that should bode well as the year goes on. I like the positive approach. I'm not that positive yet, but Gary, you seem to echo a little bit of Eric's sentiment here.
Yeah, I thought they played. Rutgers has got some guys that can score. Though Keegan did a terrific job on what's his name, the guy with all the hair.
Harper or Baker.
Harper, yeah, Harper. Harper's a good player. The other guard has played a lot of Big Ten basketball. They held him in check. So I thought defensively they were good. Certainly good enough to win. And they got to build on that because they'll play teams that'll be better offensively. They'll play teams that'll finish better around the basket. But I think it's interesting is he's playing more and more man, and I think that's a reason why they're getting better. This is probably as little zone as Iowa's played in a long time. Although I haven't watched him as much as you guys do, but I usually watch them when they're on, and I think he's playing a lot more man than he's ever played before, and I think it's part of the reason why it's getting a little bit better. I think they're on the right track.
He can do it. I think he's got athletes he trusts to play more man, right?
Yeah, that could be. It could be. But if you're practicing and you're only practicing your man and not practicing all these other defenses, you're bound to get better at that one.
Right.
And I think there's some truth to that. I think I'd love to ask him why he's playing more man than he ever has, in my opinion. Now, somebody might say, no, I don't agree with you, but I just haven't seen as much zone as I remember them playing in the past. And I'm curious as to why, but I think their man's gotten better.
Okay. Vincent says, any comments on Patrick McCaffrey's continued poor play? Well, Vincent, I will say, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think Patrick's played great, but I believe Patrick's the only other guy in double figures tonight. So it was Keegan and Patrick. Keegan with 13 points, Patrick with 11. I do feel like I agree with Vincent on this. I do feel like Patrick's still struggling. And we talked about who's that second guy. Some nights it's Patrick, and then he's kind of out of sync offensively. I mean, heck, a month ago, Gary, it looked like Tony Perkins was going to maybe be and he is. I love Tony, but offensively, he's struggling right now. He's almost non-existent as far as an offensive threat.
Yeah, it's all of them are not. Are not great 3-point shooters, and so you can play off them and play them for the drive and get some help and makes them a little bit easier to guard. Patrick had a huge basket on a nice drive that was a real big bucket. He's probably not shooting the ball as well as he's capable or would like to. And I think the physical part of the game wears on him. It's a physical league, but he's young too. I mean, that sounds repetitive, but people develop at all different kinds of rates, and he's due to break out here. Hopefully he will.
So Oatmeal for Life, and we're going to finish this off, Gary, with I want to just ask you a question or two about Chris Street on the 29-year anniversary, of course. But Oatmeal for Life brings up the tourney outlook. I think this team will make the tournament, and I thought that before this game. Now I'm a little bit concerned offensively, but I'm going to pump the brakes on those concerns. We'll see. Again, got an opportunity now, 2 of these next 3 against Penn State to still get a couple wins here. I think they'll make the tournament because I see this kind of a seesaw continuing. I could be wrong, but I think there's going to be inconsistency. It's going to be a struggle to win on the road. But I also think Iowa's got enough to where we're going to see I would say I think you can bank on close to 500. Now maybe they finish 9-11 and miss out, but I would guess right now that 10-10 is a pretty good outlook for this team. They're 3-4 right now, and of course they've got I believe two of their next three at home.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's real good. And I think if you'd have said that at the beginning of the year, maybe you would have thought, hey, that's not bad, especially with the schedule they've played. And they've had a couple games that were right there. The Purdue game on the road, the Illinois game at home. This game could have easily gone in a different direction, and maybe they will, and then get on a streak. No, I think there's a lot of basketball left to be played. I think this team's got a lot of potential, and they've shown flashes of really playing good basketball. They've got to, as we talked about, they got to learn from this and move on. They got a game Saturday that's big. It's home. They don't want to lose too many more games at home. They got to take care of that because it's tough to win on the road. But they've been in just about every game, with maybe one exception, and playing in a tough league. So there's a lot of basketball left to be played.
Absolutely. Thomas brings up the bench, certainly a factor tonight.
No doubt.
Connor brings it up as well. I know you brought it up, Gary. So I want to switch here to the final few moments of the show to discuss what is always a very difficult day, I'm sure, for you, Gary, and for everybody that was a part of that 93 Iowa men's basketball team. And I texted you earlier today. Of course, the Big Ten Network replayed the Iowa-Michigan game that was, a little over a week after the tragedy of Chris Street and his death. What do you remember from 29 years ago? How much does that day stand out in your mind 29 years later?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 29 years. My goodness. It's, when this day rolls around, not that you don't think about them a lot even on any other day, but especially when you're watching basketball or watching athletics or whatever, a lot of times it'll pop right into your head. But this day, of course, you'll never forget. It was just an awful time, and it's hard to believe it's 29 years. It's amazing. In some ways it feels like yesterday, but in other ways it's hard to believe he's been gone that long. But he was a wonderful kid. I really feel lucky that I had a chance to know him and coach him, get to know his family. He's a terrific player. He epitomized everything that's great about Iowa and Iowa athletics and Iowa basketball. And he was on a course to be I felt a pro player for a long time, and was the heart and soul of our team, and a really, really fun guy to coach. So there's a lot of times I think about, boy, what kind of player he would have ended up being and how long he would have played in the NBA. And it's a real shame that got cut short.
For some of the younger fans, and I'm one, I wasn't alive in 93, Gary. And there's, I'm sure, a lot of people who are listening here who were not alive or were too young to remember. So kind of describe to our listeners what made Chris so special off the court.
Well, he was just genuine. He was a typical Iowa kid. He loved living life. He had a lot of interests, and he was just genuine and honest and open, and put on no airs. And he loved being a Hawkeye. That's what he wanted to be from probably since he was hardly born. He wanted to be a Hawkeye. So he appreciated the opportunity to be at the school and to play for the Hawks. And so when he went out there, he just gave it everything he got. And yet off the court, he was a good friend and good brother, good son, good teammate. And, I was watching Northwestern play last night. Chris Collins is the coach there. We recruited Chris Collins hard. He was, Doug Collins's son. He's from the suburb of Chicago and ended up being a really good college player. He ended up going to Duke. And when he came on his visit, Chris was his host, and Chris almost got him to come here. Chris Collins will tell you today, it was really, really close. If it hadn't been Duke, he probably would have come. And a big reason for that was in a short period of time, the relationship he forged with him and how well Chris communicated to him what it was like to play for Iowa and be in Iowa City. And he did that with a lot of the recruits that we had, and pretty unique kid. It was, we were really lucky to cross paths.
Do you remember what the locker room was like after the Michigan State game or after the Michigan game? And those, I believe it was a 3-game winning streak right after his passing, and certainly the Michigan game going back home to a packed Carver. Do you remember what the locker room was like after beating the Fab Five?
That was the loudest I've ever heard Carver Hawkeye Arena. I mean, that place was just unbelievable that day. And Michigan was obviously a really, really talented team. They were ranked in the top 5, I think. They had the Fab Five and on and so forth. The only thing I can really remember is we had the family back in afterwards, and we gave them the game ball, and it was a pretty emotional time. I give him a lot of credit. I don't know if I could have gone to an arena where my son had played 3 weeks ago and sat in the front row and watched a game like that. But Mike and Patty and the girls were, that's just who they are, and brought her back to the locker room, and it was very emotional, and what a phenomenal effort by our team to win those 2 games after what they had been through. It's probably those 2 games are as big a games that I've witnessed in a coaching career, just from all that went on and how we pulled it off.
I think that, again, I didn't know Chris. I don't know Patty and Mike. I know I've had conversations with Don Patterson, who runs into Patty and Mike a lot, and he said the same thing, and they seem like very strong people. And I'm sure that situation made them stronger. But yeah, I was thinking that as they were replaying that game today on BTN, how in the world can you sit there? But they had all of Iowa behind them. They had the whole arena behind them, and obviously sure. You guys. What a moment! And again, you say it all the time, but what a tragedy, but also the career that was lost. And again, the life of a young man who had so much more than basketball is so much more important. But there's no escaping the fact that this kid, like you said, was probably an NBA player.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. That's the direction he was going on. He, his last game was at Duke, and he was the best player on the floor. And there were a lot of pro players on the floor that day. That was you talk about a physical, knock him down, drag it out game. That thing went right down to the end. And we felt after leaving that game that we had a chance to win a national championship with that team. And we took on a team that had won a lot of national championships and battled them right to the end. And we were playing really, really good basketball. And then obviously to lose him and the way we lost him, we were still a pretty good team, but obviously not the same that we were prior to the accident. And that could have been a team that could have done a lot of damage come March, because we were really playing well.
Who recruited Chris? Do you remember, Gary?
I did, but it's everybody recruits. The head coach does something, and the players do it, and to be honest with you, anybody could have recruited Chris Street to Iowa, because that's where he wanted to go. I mean, the only thing he could have done is not screw it up, which fortunately I didn't do. So, I mean, he literally committed after a camp, going into his junior year. So there wasn't a whole lot of recruiting going on, other than we found him, discovered him fairly early, and got a chance to see him play, and knew he could play, and got him down to campus. But beyond that, the school is what recruited him. He wanted to be a Hawk, and anybody could have gotten him.
Final question, and a segue away from Chris here for this final question, and I want to see if I can find it. I just lost it in the chat here. Ryan says, describe the 20-year Iowa versus Wisconsin game where you coached on the other side. I'm assuming he means, what does he mean by 20 years? Is there a 20-year game?
He might have meant we played Iowa on January 19th, 20 years after he had died.
Oh, okay.
And that was not an easy game. It was never an easy game for me to go play at Iowa. It's a game I really would prefer not to play, though I'll be honest, I enjoyed beating them. But Iowa played a phenomenal game that day. We knew they were going to be ready. They had a real good team, and it was 20-year anniversary, and the place was packed and loud, and we had a good team, but they were better that night, and was not an easy game to play because there was a lot leading up to it concerning the 20 years, and so, but you just gotta, once the ball goes up, it gets a little bit easier. Then you can just kind of focus on the game and try to help out where you can. It's the stuff leading up and the stuff after that make it a little more difficult.
So 2013.
That would have been 2013, yeah.
So that was a Fran team. I don't remember that game. I'll have to look back. I just don't remember that game. And that was in Carver?
I was in Carver, yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it was a close game. Iowa jumped out to a pretty good sized lead. Then we came back and made it a game. But
okay.
They had a very good team that year, and so did we. And it was a real good college basketball game that Iowa deserved to win and did.
I just don't remember that game. And usually my memory with Iowa basketball, at least in the past 12 years, is pretty sharp. But that would have been like Aaron White, Devin Marble,
Yeah.
I'm assuming those guys. But I just
yep,
that game up.
Yep. I think Jeff Horner maybe, and it was a real good Iowa basketball team then. Real tough to play, and they jumped on us. The place was jumping, and we did fight our way back to make it a competitive game. But they were better that day. Oh, there it was, 80-76, yeah.
80-76.
Yeah.
2013. All right, Gary. Well, this is been a pleasure to be able to reminisce, and I know it's always a difficult day, I'm sure, for everybody that was a part of that, and certainly a tough day for Iowa fans today. But as you and I both know, regardless of how this game was lost, if there's anything that Iowa fans should be confident in, at least from my perspective, anything that Iowa fans are confident in Fran doing, it's better in offense, right? He's an offensive-minded coach. Now, I've questioned over the years, Gary, I've questioned at times, does he have what it takes to fix some of the defensive issues? But I don't think you can debate the fact that he is more than qualified to fix offensive issues. So regardless of what's happened, and again, we saw some struggles late in that Minnesota game Sunday against that zone. You hope that they can fix those, and they've got, 3 days? It's bang, bang, bang. There's no more week-long breaks, though, from here on out. So it's fix these issues quickly. Yeah.
That's why you gotta study the tape and figure out what you did wrong. Then you got to move on. You just can't belabor it too long, or like we said, one loss turns into two, turns into three, and turns into a losing streak. And this team is good enough to not go on things like that, and hopefully get hot again and put a streak together. It would not surprise me. I think they got enough there that they can. They just got to be a little more consistent.
Absolutely. So for anybody that is not aware, and I'm going to go ahead and pop this up on the banner here. Iowa, Penn State, of course, this coming Saturday. It'll be a 3:30 p.m. game. And Gary, how about this? It's sold out.
Nice.
That is good news, because that means I'm assuming that means the students are sold out as well. That's the main thing I'm looking for. So I would think the students are all back, and this is an opportunity for a raucous crowd. Because let's be honest, Gary, if they go in there and put up 85 on Penn State and win by 10, 15, or if they win by 5, if they're back clicking, we're not going to remember this game a couple weeks. I mean, it's going to be on the resume, but it's not a bad loss.
Yeah, Rutgers is 5-2. I mean, they're a game out of first place. So, maybe they haven't been like that in the past. They had a good year last year, but they're a pretty solid basketball team. They beat Purdue there. So it's a tough loss because they really had a chance to win it. They did a lot of things well enough to win it other than putting the ball in the basket. And so hopefully that'll get better. And like I said, it wouldn't surprise me they go on a little bit of a roll. They're not that far off. I just got to be a little more consistent and see that ball go down.
Absolutely. All right, folks. 3:30, not 1:30. 3:30 Saturday, Iowa.
I'll be there Saturday. I'm looking forward to it.
You'll be there on Saturday.
Nice to see that place packed.
Boy, that'll be a treat. So, when's the last time you've been to I'm curious. When's the last time you've been to a sold out Carver? Do you know?
That's a good question. Probably when I was coaching in Wisconsin. I bet it was pretty close to being sold out. Probably 2016.
Okay.
We played them
Yeah.
that year, and I think we did. I can't remember, tell you the truth, but if it wasn't sold out, it was close. So probably 5 years.
Well,
6 years.
enjoy
Yeah.
safe travels down and enjoy that game. And it'd be a great, again, any win in the Big Ten's a good win. And if you win that, you're right on pace at 4-4. And then you're back home against Purdue following Thursday. So Gary, we appreciate the time as always.
All right, Corey.
We will talk to you next time.
Look forward to it. Take care.
All right, for Coach Gary Close, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, we'll talk to everybody on Saturday.